Duke is a fictional character from the G.I. Joe, a real American hero in G.I. Joe, Sigma 6 lines of military-themed toys. The character is featured in both the animated series and comic books. Channing Tatum portrays Duke in the 2009 live-action film, G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, and the 2013 sequel G.I. Joe, Retaliation. Profile: Duke is the codename of First Sergeant Conrad S. Hauser, and was born in St. Louis, Missouri. He is a skilled polyglot, being fluent in English, French and German, as well as several Southeast Asian languages. He was at the top of his class at Fort Benning, attended U.S. Army Special Language School, has undergone Special Forces training, and worked with South Vietnamese tribesmen. He was also an instructor in 4 different Special Forces schools. Despite his accomplishments, he has repeatedly turned down any officer commissions offered to him. He believes a commander's place is with his troops, not behind the battle lines. Duke is field commander and second-in-command of the G.I. Joe team after Hawk. In this role, he has served as a rugged leader by example, a precise giver of orders, a source of history and knowledge, and a fair settler of disputes. As the team has fluctuated in size and structure over the years, Duke has supervised the training of the non-commissioned officers in G.I. Joe, as well as leading special units such as Tiger Force and Star Brigade. After the G.I. Joe team disbanded, Duke disappeared. It was later learned that he had been performing black ops for a secret government agency, his missions of which are still highly classified. One such mission was to locate and detain the mercenary Major Blood, which led to evidence that Cobra Commander had returned, and hastened the reinstatement of G.I. Joe. Duke returned to active duty in G.I. Joe when the team was reinstated, though his maverick and dangerous behavior took some of his longtime colleagues by surprise, and caused him to relinquish his position as field commander for a more behind-the-scenes advisory role. Toys, vintage modern, Duke was one of the first male away figures created in 1983 for the G.I. Joe 3 3/4 action figure line of G.I. Joe, a real American hero. He was later released as a carded figure in 1984, as part of the 3rd series. A figure was recolored and released as the leader of the Tiger Force line in 1988. A new version of Duke was released in 1992. Another version was released as part of the Battle Core line in 1993. New versions of Duke were also released in 1993 and 1994, as commander of the Star Brigade line. A version of Duke with no accessories came with a built-to-rule Armadillo Assault, which followed the G.I. Joe, Spy Troops storyline. The forearms and the calves of the figure sported places where blocks could be attached. The same figure was recolored and released in 2005 with a built-to-rule Freedom Defense Outpost. Hall of Fame. In response to the high demand from nostalgic collectors of the vintage-era G.I. Joe action figures, Hasbro introduced the G.I. Joe Hall of Fame era of 12 inches action figures in 1991. Duke was the first 12 inches action figure produced in the Hasbro G.I. Joe line since 1978. The first 12 inches Duke was a Target Stores exclusive. The popularity of the figure convinced Hasbro to unleash a new series of 12 inches G.I. Joe action figures, known as the Hall of Fame series. These new 12 inches figures were based on the G.I. Joe, a real American hero series of 3.75 action figure characters. The 12 inches Duke had a head sculpt that was never used again for any other G.I. Joe figure, and was dressed for Desert Storm combat, with a backpack, commemorative stand, a light-up weapon with sound effects, grenades, and a Beretta handgun and holster. 25th anniversary, Duke was released in a box packed with Snake Eyes, Scarlet, Roadblock, and Gung Ho, created from an entirely new mold that was based heavily on the original design. He was also released in several single packs, comic packs, movie packs, and multi-packs. Duke was one of the only G.I. Joe figures to be released in a special package for the G.I. Joe Resolute animated series. The Rise of Cobra. To coincide with the launch of the movie G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra, Hasbro released at least 2 figures in 2009 based on the Duke movie character. For both releases, he is listed as Conrad Duke Hauser. The first, classified as Desert Ambush, features Duke in a desert camouflage uniform. The second, classified as reactive impact armor, features him in the movie-style black uniform. Two versions of Duke were also released as part of a Pursuit of Cobra line in 2010, with non-actor-based heads. 30th anniversary. The G.I. Joe Renegades version of Duke was released as an action figure in 2011, as part of the 30th anniversary line. 3 versions of Duke were released in 2012, the last one listed again as Conrad Dukehauser to tie in with the movie G.I. Joe, Retaliation. Comic series, Marvel Comics. In the Marvel Comics G.I. Joe series, Duke first appears in issue number 22. He and Roadblock act as security for the funeral of General Flagg, shooting down an attacking Rattler plane. Duke is added to the G.I. Joe team lineup, to help straighten the team out and become the new field commander. His first mission is surveillance of the Baroness and Major Blood at the Bern Institute of Reconstructive Surgery in Switzerland. A major battle results in the capture of Cobra Commander. Duke leads an effort to keep Cobra Commander prisoner in a mountain base. However, the Cobra Ninja Storm Shadow rescues the commander. Duke then traveled down to Florida, where he and Roadblock met up with Cutter and Deep Six, taking the WHALE hovercraft and attacking Zorton's Swamp Shack hideout in the Florida Everglades. After Destro and Firefly steal the WHALE, Duke and Wild Bill take the Dragonfly copter to go after Destro and recover the vehicle. His next field mission is to investigate a suspected Cobra undercover agent on Staten Island. The agent escapes, but leaves behind clues to a secret Cobra operation in the Gulf of Mexico. Duke leads an assault team on the newly formed Cobra Island, but is forced to withdraw when the island is officially recognized as a sovereign state. Duke takes part in the invasion of the Cobra-controlled town of Springfield, as the leader of the security team. He also plays second-in-command to Hawk during the Cobra Civil War. After that mission, Duke spends some time training new members of the Joe team. His next mission involves leading a team to push Cobra out of Trucial Abysmia, but intelligence vastly underestimates Cobra's presence there. Duke's squad is captured, and a misinterpreted order leads to several men being shot dead by a SAW Viper. Doc, Heavy Metal, Thunder, and Crankcase are slain immediately. The Viper is wounded, and the survivors escape in a Cobra Rage tank. It is destroyed, killing Crazy Legs, Breaker, and Quick Kick. Duke and the other 2 survivors, Cross Country and Lieutenant Falcon, make it back to friendly lines safely. Duke would recover from that experience and lead the defense of the Joe headquarters, the Pit, against Cobra. He also led a cover mission to Cobra Island, to oust control of it by Firefly and the Red Ninjas. As leader of Star Brigade, Duke teamed up with the October Guard to destroy an asteroid threatening Earth. He would continue working with G.I. Joe until its disbandment. In an interview in Toy Fair magazine, G.I. Joe comic book writer Larry Hama admitted he could never get a handle on Duke. According to Hama, military comic book conventions maintain that the commanding officer is the good cop, and the first sergeant is the bad cop, and Duke, as first sergeant, never really fit the bad cop mold. Devil's Due. After the disbandment, Duke went to take on Black Ops assignments for a secret government agency for a few years. It was during one of his missions that he discovered Cobra's attempt to make a comeback. He helped rally the effort to have G.I. Joe reinstated. By this time, Duke had a different edge to him, taking more risks and sometimes putting teammates in danger. When Hawk was incapacitated in a Cobra assassination attempt, Duke took up his injured mentor's causes, fighting the corrupt jugglers while holding the team together in the wake of the loss of their leader. America's Elite. The team is reorganized in the G.I. Joe, America's Elite series. Duke disappears, going off on his own mission to locate Cobra Commander. During his search, he is captured by a group of BATS under the control of a Crimson Guardsman, who also had a grudge against Cobra Commander and wished to locate him. Duke frees himself, and after much torture, kills the Guardsman and saves Washington, D.C. from being nuked. Civilians then treat his wounds and help him return home. Duke also assists his colleagues in defending their Yellowstone base from enemy infiltration. Later, Duke deals with his father, a protester who dislikes the military. During a talk in his father's home, both men are captured by Cobra agents. Alternate Universe Series, G.I. Joe Reloaded. In the series, Duke is a double agent working for Cobra, due to his distress over the U.S. government's willingness to create destructive weaponry. In the final issue, he confronts Scarlet in a sewer system. She gains the upper hand and kills him with a knife to the back. Fun Publications. In the mirror universe created by Fun Publications, Duke's counterpart is Secretary of Defense Conrad Hauser, serving in the administration of U.S. President Joe Colton. In the story Eye in the Sky, Hauser had to report to the president on the loss of an orbital defense satellite to the evil alien robots called the Autobots, and its eventual destruction thanks to the efforts of the heroic Decepticons. Cartoons. A Real American Hero. In the first G.I. Joe miniseries The Mass Device, Duke is the field leader of G.I. Joe, under the command of General Flagg. Though the comic books and file cards say Duke is from St. Louis, Missouri, the Mass Device miniseries said that Duke was from Iowa. By the beginning of the first season of G.I. Joe, the role of commanding officer frequently alternated between Duke and Flint, the warrant officer who was introduced in the Revenge of Cobra miniseries. This was due in part to the series writers trying to balance the regulation of characters, based on the prominence of their action figures. In the second season, Hawk replaces Duke as commander of G.I. Joe. Duke becomes second in command, while Flint is the third man down. In the episode The Synthoid Conspiracy, Duke was not only taken prisoner, but replaced with one of Destro's synthetic doppelgangers, in an attempt to get the G.I. Joe team disbanded permanently. Duke appears briefly alongside Torpedo in one of the series' public service announcements about the dangers of swimming alone. Duke was voiced by Michael Bell. G.I. Joe, the movie. In G.I. Joe, the movie, Duke is the older half-brother of Lieutenant Falcon. Duke was responsible for foiling Cobra's first attempt to take over the Bet Machine and captures Serpentor. With the aid of Cobra La and the Dreadnoks, Serpentor escapes and gets his revenge during a second attempt to obtain the Bet Machine. Duke is critically wounded when Serpentor impales him in battle. We see Scarlet holding him as he asks his half-brother Falcon to become a better soldier. His injuries cause him to slip into a coma. This makes the second time that Duke has lapsed into a coma, the first being in the Traitor two-part story, where his condition prevents him from letting the other Joes in on Dusty's triple agent status. Duke's original fate in the movie was to die at the hands of Serpentor. However, due to fan backlash regarding the death of Optimus Prime in the Transformers, the movie, Hasbro asked for a re-edit, so Duke would merely fall into a coma following Serpentor's venomous attack, and a later edit added dialogue near the end of the movie, indicating Duke recovers from his injuries. Spy Troops and Valor vs. Venom. Duke appeared in the direct-to-video CGI animated movies G.I. Joe, Spy Troops and G.I. Joe, Valor vs. Venom, voiced by John Payne. Sigma 6. In G.I. Joe, Sigma 6, Duke is the leader of the G.I. Joe team. He has retained much of his personality from the A Real American Hero series, albeit looking much younger and with a new haircut. One other physical differentiation of this Duke from previous continuities, is the scar on his right cheek. He is still willing to go into the most dangerous situations, rather than send a member of his team to do it. This Duke is much more comfortable being the military man than engaging in social situations, as seen in the first season episode Vacation. Resolute. Duke appeared in G.I. Joe, Resolute. In the course of the storyline, Duke presents Scarlet with an ultimatum, to go with Snake Eyes or to remain with him, and she chooses to be with Duke. Later on, while on a mission in Siberia, Duke gets injured and orders Scarlet to leave him. She refuses and replies, "Oh, to hell with your orders. It's taken me years to sort out in my head what I want, who I want, and today I did. I'm staying with you, for all the time I have left. And if that only 6 minutes, then damn it, I'm spending my last 6 minutes with you." Renegades. In G.I. Joe, Renegades, Duke is a younger, and far more aggressive version than his other incarnations. Duke is a member of command staff, and makes the decision to expose the Cobra mega corporation's true basis at cost, which results in them being branded as criminals following the destruction of Cobra Pharmaceuticals. In the two-part episode Homecoming, a flashback revealed that Duke was on a football team in his youth and went up against the football team that Flint was a part of. A play that Flint did ended up breaking Duke's leg, costing him his college scholarship. A later encounter with Flint had Duke being given the offer to join the military. During a training, Duke saves a fellow cadet who had stepped on a pressure-activated landmine, with Duke taking the small blunt of the blast. When he was assigned to work with Stalker to thwart a weapons trade held by MARS Industries, Duke ended up disobeying orders when a MARS operative shoots down a helicopter that Lady J was on and ended up saving her and the pilot. In the present, Duke splinters from the others when his parents Max and Connie are captured. During that time, he did have some problems with his brother Vince, who was shown displeased with what happened at Cobra Pharmaceuticals and stated that their parents are in doubt about what happened. After Duke saves his parents and reunites with the other Joes, they arrive at the Hauser household where Connie wanted to treat them to a meal. Unfortunately, Vince had called Flint after he had warned Duke to stay away. Duke ends up defending his actions towards the other Joes and tells Flint upon the group's arrest to see that their families are protected. Live-action movies. Channing Tatum portrays Duke in the 2009 film G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. He is the primary protagonist and is part of General Hawk's team. Contrary to his original backstory, he is a newcomer to the G.I. Joe team. All Joe rookies are already established, well-trained soldiers. Also in the 2009 film, Duke identifies himself as a captain, while conspicuously wearing the rank of Major or LT Commander, although all versions of his action figure have him graded at Major 04. There is no reference in the film to him ever performing duties as a first sergeant. He was also engaged to Mariana Lewis but left her at the altar because of guilt due to the apparent death of Anna's brother, Rex. Duke helps defeat and imprison Rex, now the leader of Cobra, as the Cobra Commander. Tatum returns as Duke in the sequel, G.I. Joe, Retaliation, where the character has been awarded his own team of Joes. After saving Flint, Duke is killed off early in the film via an airstrike ordered by Zorton. Zorton is killed and exposed by Storm Shadow, Cobra Commander escapes, and G.I. Joe is reinstated. Roadblock vows to go after Cobra Commander and avenge Duke. Director John M. Chu has stated that Duke may return in the third film. Video games. Duke is one of the featured characters in the 1985 G.I. Joe, a real American hero computer game. Duke is featured as a playable character in the 1991 G.I. Joe video game created for the Nintendo Entertainment System. He is also featured as a playable character in the 1992 game G.I. Joe, The Atlantis Factor, and in the G.I. Joe arcade game. Duke appears as a playable character in the video game G.I. Joe, The Rise of Cobra. Other media. Duke appeared in the Robot Chicken episode More Blood, More Chocolate voiced by Skeet Ulrich. In the Inside the Battlefield, the Weather Dominator segment, it is mentioned that he and Snake Eyes were captured by Cobra and forced to battle each other. A recurring gag in that segment is that Duke can't understand what Snake Eyes wrote on the Etch-a-Sketch. In P.S., Yes in That Way, Duke introduces the G.I. Joe team to the newest recruit named Calvin, and ends up nicknaming him Fumbles for his clumsiness. After another of Calvin's clumsy moments during the introduction, Duke makes Fumbles the team's janitor. When Calvin defects to Cobra and snipes the G.I. Joe team, Calvin only leaves Duke alive. In the Ramblings of Morris, he and the G.I. Joe members award Roadblock with a chocolate statue. After Junkyard eats the chocolate statue and dies, Duke speaks at Junkyard's funeral, and has Junkyard's name added to the Wall of Fallen Heroes. Amazed that Junkyard was the only name on the list, he bets that Cobra's Wall of Fallen Villains is full of names. Duke's romantic inclinations are touched on in the non-fiction paperback Saturday Morning Fever. Michael Bell reprises his role of Duke in the Community episode G.I. Jeff. References. External links: Duke at the Internet Movie Database. Duke at JMM's G.I. Joe Comics homepage.